She was found tied to a wooden post in the middle of a raging blizzard, her face frozen, her uniform torn, her breath fading as snow swallowed her whole. The men who bound her there didn't just want her dead. They wanted her to suffer, to vanish beneath the storm, her body hidden like a warning to anyone who dared to cross them. But just before her strength failed, her lips moved with one final message, a whisper that would haunt the man who found her. "They'll kill the whole city." Before we begin, like, share, and comment below. Who do you think tied her there? And don't forget to subscribe to hear stories of courage, of soldiers who fought battles not on the battlefield, but within the human heart. The foothills of Aspen Ridge, Colorado, lay drowned beneath a storm that seemed to have swallowed the world. The wind roared like a living thing, flinging snow in violent spirals that erased roads, fences, and footprints. Through that white chaos, a small cabin stood alone at the edge of the forest, its light the only sign of life for miles. Inside, Logan Price sat beside the fire, the quiet crackle of burning wood his only company. He had spent 3 winters up here, alone, trading the noise of war for the silence of snow. Once, he had been a Marine, a man who moved through foreign deserts where the air reeked of heat and fear. But peace had never followed him home. It was something that recoiled from him, something he could never hold. He was checking the storm shutters when he heard it, a faint sound buried in the wind. It was not the groan of trees or the crack of ice, but a voice, weak, thin, human. Logan stopped breathing for a second, listening. The voice came again, softer now, like a prayer dissolving into the snow. Without thinking, he grabbed his flashlight and his coat, then stepped into the storm. The cold bit into his face like broken glass. Snow piled against his boots as he forced his way forward, scanning the tree line. The sound drew him north, where the woods began to darken into a blur of motionless trunks. When his flashlight cut through the swirling white, it found something that did not belong, a figure half buried against a wooden post, frozen in the storm's fury. He reached her in seconds, falling to his knees beside her. She was a woman, bound to the post by rope that had cut deep into her wrists. Her lips were blue, her breath barely there. A few feet away lay a dog, a German shepherd, its body trembling violently but still alive. The animal's eyes flickered open at Logan's touch, and in them was a defiance he recognized, the same refusal to die that soldiers carried on battlefields. "Hey," he said, leaning close to the woman, brushing snow from her face. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids twitched, opening just enough to reveal eyes that seemed to see through him rather than at him. Her lips parted, the words scraping out of her throat like broken glass. "They'll kill the whole city." The wind seemed to freeze around her whisper. Logan felt the world go still. Whoever they were, this wasn't random. No one tied a cop to a post in the middle of a blizzard for chance. Her head slumped forward, unconscious. Logan's pulse sharpened. He cut through the ropes with his knife and pressed his fingers against her neck. There was a pulse, weak but present. He turned to the dog, who gave a faint, guttural growl when Logan moved closer, as if warning him not to hurt her. "I'm not your enemy," he muttered, wrapping one arm under the animal to lift it. "You're coming too." He carried the woman first, staggering through the drifts back toward the faint glow of his cabin light. Every step felt heavier than the last. The storm wanted her, wanted them both. When he finally reached the porch, his muscles burned with cold. He laid her by the fire, then returned for the dog. The shepherd was heavier than he looked, but Logan had carried worse through worse. The animal whimpered softly as he set it beside her, curling instinctively toward her warmth. Inside, the room filled with a hiss of melting snow. Logan worked quickly, checking her breathing, wrapping her in blankets, rubbing warmth back into her hands. He poured a small cap of whiskey, diluted it with water, and pressed it to her lips. She stirred faintly. The dog's breathing slowed, but his gaze never left her. Logan sat back, watching the two of them as the storm screamed outside. His heart pounded with questions he couldn't yet ask. Who tied her there? Why? What did she mean by the whole city? He leaned forward, adding wood to the fire. The warmth pushed the cold back inch by inch, but the unease in his chest only deepened. There was something about her, the way she had whispered those words with such certainty, as if she had already seen it happen. He reached for his radio. Old military grade, good enough to reach a ranger station, but stopped halfway. His instincts screamed against it. Someone had done this to her. Whoever they were, they would come looking, maybe even listening. Instead, he locked the door, checked the windows, and sat again beside the fire. The storm battered the cabin walls, trying to get in. He studied her face in the glow of the flames. Peaceful now, though her body bore the marks of something savage. The dog shifted closer, resting its muzzle against her shoulder. Logan looked at the two of them, and something inside him changed. He had come here to escape the world, but the world, it seemed, had found him again. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, the whisper still echoing in his head. They'll kill the whole city. Outside, the storm howled like a warning from the mountains. Inside, by the dying firelight, a soldier's quiet exile had just ended. By dawn, the storm had weakened, leaving the forest blanketed in a pale, unbroken silence. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low but steady, casting amber light across the wooden walls. Logan Price sat near the hearth, staring at the woman he had carried from the storm. Her breathing had steadied during the night, and some color had returned to her face. The German shepherd, he had started calling him Shadow, lay curled beside her, alert even in exhaustion. Every so often the dog's ears twitched, as if waiting for a danger only he could sense. Logan had seen that kind of vigilance before, in soldiers who never truly left the battlefield. When the woman stirred, Logan poured water into a tin cup and offered it. Her hands trembled as she took it, sipping carefully. "You're safe here," he said, keeping his voice low. She looked at him, confusion flickering behind the exhaustion in her eyes. Where am I?" "Aspen Ridge," he answered. "You were half buried in the snow. I found you last night." Her gaze shifted to the fire, then to Shadow. The dog lifted his head as if to reassure her. A faint smile passed her lips, a fragile thing that vanished as quickly as it came. "You shouldn't have brought me here," she whispered. Logan frowned. "Why?" Her answer was quiet but sharp. "Because they'll come looking." Before he could ask who they were, a sudden knock broke through the cabin silence. 3 firm raps, deliberate, not the kind the wind could make. Shadow's head snapped up. A deep, guttural growl rose from his chest. Logan motioned for silence and reached for the old shotgun resting by the wall. His instincts returned in full, steady breath, slow steps. He cracked the door just enough to see outside. A man stood on the porch, snow clinging to the shoulders of a dark uniform. His smile was polite, his eyes anything but. "Morning," the man said. "Rough night, huh? Storm like that could bury a moose." Logan didn't smile. "Yeah, guess I got lucky." The man shifted, resting a hand casually on his belt. A badge glinted under his coat. "Sheriff's Department," he said. "We're checking cabins in the area. Got a call about a missing officer. You seen anyone out here?" Logan kept his tone even. "No one but me." The stranger's gaze drifted past him into the cabin. His eyes caught on the faint marks on the floor, a smear of melted snow, maybe tinged red. Logan's stomach tightened. "Mind if I come in?" the man asked, smiling as if the question were just a formality. Logan didn't move. "Not a good time. I've got a busted generator and a wet floor. If someone's missing, I'll keep an eye out." The man studied him, eyes narrowing slightly. Then, with a small nod, he reached into his pocket and handed over a card. "Detective Marcus Steele," he said. "If you hear or see anything strange, call me." Logan took the card without looking at it. "Will do." Steele turned to leave, stepping off the porch, but just before the storm swallowed him, he looked back. "By the way," he said, voice casual, "we found blood on the road about half a mile east. Looked human. Be careful who you help up here, Mr. Price. Not everyone deserves saving." The door shut with a quiet click that sounded far too final. Logan stood still for a moment, the silence of the cabin pressing in around him. When he turned, the woman was gone. Panic flared. Then he saw the back door ajar. He followed her tracks through the snow, shadow bounding ahead, nose to the ground. The wind cut across the valley again, colder now. He found her only a few yards behind the cabin, collapsed near the tree line. Her body was shaking violently from cold, her breath shallow and fast. "You shouldn't have come out here," he muttered, kneeling beside her. She tried to speak, but her teeth chattered too hard for words. He lifted her into his arms again, Shadow pacing beside them as they returned to the cabin. Inside, he laid her near the fire and wrapped her in the blankets once more. "That man," he said. "You knew him?" She stared into the flames, her face pale but resolute. "His name is Marcus Steele," she said. "He's not looking for a missing officer. He's looking for me." Logan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "You worked with him?" She nodded. "I did, before I found out what he really was." The way she said it carried weight, a truth forged in betrayal. "You think he'll come back?" Logan asked. "I know he will," she whispered, "and next time he won't knock." The room went quiet, except for the popping of the fire. Shadow lay at her feet, his eyes never leaving the door. Logan stared at the detective's card still clenched in his hand. The paper was creased, the ink slightly smeared, but the name burned into his mind. Marcus Steele. There was a time when men like that had hunted him overseas. Now one had found him here. As night fell, the storm began again, lighter, but sharp enough to whisper across the windows. Logan poured himself a small measure of whiskey, his thoughts circling the same question. What had he brought into his home? When he looked over, the woman had finally fallen asleep. Shadow curled tightly against her side. For the first time in years, Logan felt something he didn't understand, a responsibility that reached deeper than duty, the kind that could get a man killed. Outside, the snow began to fall harder again. Somewhere beyond the ridge, in the dark timberline, a single pair of headlights blinked through the trees, then vanished. The hunt, it seemed, had already begun. The sun had barely risen over Aspen Ridge, turning the snow into a cold mirror of light. Inside Logan's cabin, the fire had burned to embers, leaving behind only a faint orange glow. The woman, she had told him her name now, Claire Monroe, sat on the edge of the couch, wrapped in a wool blanket. Her face was still pale, but her eyes no longer looked lost. They held something fierce, something that had refused to die even after the storm. Shadow sat at her feet, head resting on his paws, gaze fixed on the door as if he knew it wasn't finished. Not yet. Logan poured coffee into 2 mugs. "You should rest," he said, handing one to her. Claire accepted it, but her hands didn't stop shaking. "Rest isn't going to save anyone," she said quietly. "You still haven't told me what's going on," Logan replied. "Who's hunting you? And what did you mean last night about killing the whole city?" Claire didn't answer right away. She stared into the cup as if the steam might reveal the right words. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but stripped of hope. I was, a detective with the Denver Police Department, Organized Crime Division. I was assigned to an investigation that went deeper than anyone expected. It started with drug shipments routed through small mountain towns, the kind people forget even exist. But it turned into something else, a network moving weapons and fentanyl across state lines under the radar. The deliveries came through Aspen Ridge. Logan leaned forward slightly. "Through here?" She nodded. "Most of the trucks came at night. No headlights, no records, no witnesses. But there was always one name that came up, Marcus Steele. He wasn't just the liaison from the sheriff's office. He was the one clearing the routes, the man who decides which roads are closed for safety inspections, when really they're being used for shipments. I started following the paperwork, permits, patrol schedules. That's when I found the pattern. Every major delivery had Steele's signature somewhere near it." Logan's jaw tightened. "And you confronted him?" "Not directly," she said. "I thought I was being careful, but someone must have tipped him off. The night before you found me, I overheard him talking on a secure call at the station. He was arguing with someone, called him Kane. I'd never heard the name before, but the way Steele spoke to him, it wasn't like a cop talking to a criminal. It was like a soldier reporting to his commanding officer. Kane said something about a shipment, something massive, and Steele told him I was getting too close. Kane said if that was true, they couldn't just silence one person. He said, 'Burn the evidence, burn the town if you have to.'" Her hands tightened around the mug. "I ran that night. I took my badge, my gun, and my notes. But they caught me outside town. They tied me up in the snow to freeze. Shadow tried to protect me. They shot him. I thought he was dead until I woke up in your cabin." Logan looked at the dog, whose eyes flicked up toward him with quiet understanding. He had seen that look before, among brothers in arms who survived when they weren't supposed to. "You've got proof of this?" Logan asked. Claire shook her head. "I had a phone with recordings, audio from Steele's calls, route logs, even a video of the trucks unloading. He took it before they left me for dead, but I remember enough to find them again. There's a delivery happening tomorrow night at the old North Fork Quarry. If we can get there, I can prove everything." Logan sat back, silent for a moment. Outside, wind whispered against the walls, stirring loose flakes from the roof. He'd promised himself he was done with fights that didn't belong to him, but something about the way she spoke, the calm in her fear, made that promise meaningless. "You really think you can stop them?" he asked. Claire looked at him. "No," she said softly, "but I can expose them, and maybe that's enough." The radio on the shelf suddenly crackled. Static filled the cabin, followed by a voice, male, deep, steady. "To all units, report in. We've located fresh tracks near Ridge Road. Vehicle traces suggest recent movement." Logan stood, moving to the window. Snow stretched white and endless, but in the distance 2 faint black lines cut across it, tire marks, half buried but fresh. He turned to her. "They're close." She didn't panic. She simply reached for her holster, empty now, and exhaled. "If Steele's leading this, he'll cover every road out. We can't run." Logan nodded once. "Then we make it hard for them to find us." He began moving fast, grabbing supplies, a hunting knife, extra ammunition, a radio battery, and 2 flashlights. Shadow stood too, tail stiff, body tense, reading the air like a compass to danger. "What are you doing?" Claire asked. "Something I'm not proud of remembering," Logan said. "But it works." He knelt beside the hearth, pulled up one of the old floorboards, and reached beneath. He drew out a metal box and placed it on the table. Inside were 2 signal flares, a folded map, and a small black case holding a military GPS unit. He looked at her. "If they want to play soldier, they'll get one." Shadow growled, low and warning, ears pointing toward the forest again. Claire turned to the window, heart hammering. The sound of distant engines hummed against the wind, faint but growing. Logan killed the lights, plunging the cabin into near darkness. "They're not wasting time," he said quietly. "They've found your trail." "Then we go now," Claire replied, her voice steady. "Where?" "The quarry," she said. "It's not just a delivery point. It's where they store everything before it moves out. If we can get there before nightfall, I can show you what I saw." Logan looked at her, this detective who'd crawled back from death with nothing but fire in her eyes, and gave a single nod. "Then we move fast," he said. As they stepped out into the cold, Shadow led the way through the fresh snow. The forest seemed to close around them, silent but watchful. Behind them, in the distance, a convoy of black SUVs crawled slowly up the ridge. By the time the first vehicle reached the cabin, its lights sweeping across the windows, the fire had already died out. The place was empty, the tracks already filling with snow. Only the echo of the storm remained, and in it, the faint whisper of something far bigger than any of them could yet see. The wind cut sharp through the trees as Logan and Claire moved silently down the mountain trail, their breaths turning to mist in the morning air. The storm had passed, but the cold had grown meaner, biting at exposed skin and burning in the lungs. Shadow led the way, his gait steady, his ears twitching at every distant sound. Behind them, the horizon had begun to darken again, not with clouds, but with movement, the kind that meant engines and men. They had been walking for nearly 2 hours when the first glimpse of the North Fork quarry appeared through the trees. What had once been a limestone operation decades ago was now a gaping scar in the earth, its frozen machinery rusted and skeletal under sheets of ice. But among the abandoned cranes and half-buried trucks, there were signs of life. Tire tracks too fresh to ignore, black crates stacked beside a cluster of unmarked vans, and the faint hum of a generator carried on the wind. Claire crouched behind a snow-covered ridge, binoculars in hand. Her breath hitched. "They're already loading," she whispered. "Those containers, those are the same ones Steele approved last month. They're not just moving drugs anymore. They're moving military stock." Logan studied the site through his scope. At least 10 men, maybe more inside the trucks. 2 armed guards patrolling the upper walkway. Professional formation, not random thugs. "You sure this is the right place?" he asked. Claire nodded. "Positive. The shipment leaves tonight. If it gets past the ridge, it'll disappear into 3 different states." She lowered the binoculars and looked at him. "We can't let that happen." Logan's voice was quiet but steady. "We won't." They waited as the afternoon bled into twilight. The temperature dropped again, and the quarry fell under a curtain of pale light. From their vantage point, they watched as a black SUV rolled into the site. The headlights sliced across the snow, illuminating the man stepping out from the passenger side. Detective Marcus Steele. Claire froze. "That's him!" Even from a distance, Logan could read the man's authority. Steele moved like someone who believed he owned the ground beneath him, barking orders as men scurried to obey. His breath turned to vapor in the cold, but his tone carried heat, impatience, power, arrogance. Logan could see what Claire saw, the predator behind the badge. As Steele turned toward the trucks, another vehicle approached, a black pickup with tinted windows. When the doors opened, 2 men stepped out. The one in front was tall, broad-shouldered, with movements too controlled to be anything but deliberate. His voice carried even across the distance, deep and steady. Claire's face hardened. "That's Kane," she whispered, "the one I heard on the call." Kane surveyed the operation like a general inspecting his army. Then he smiled, a small, cold gesture, and clapped Steele on the shoulder. "You did? Well," he said, his tone faint but commanding. "After tonight, there won't be anything left to connect us. The storm will handle the cleanup." Steele nodded, his expression tight. "And the detective?" "Frozen," Kane said, glancing toward the woods. "Or buried. Either way, she's gone." Claire's jaw tightened, fury flickering beneath the surface. Logan caught it immediately. "Stay focused," he murmured. "Anger gets you killed." "I'm not angry," she said through clenched teeth. "I'm remembering." They watched as the men began to load one of the trucks with sealed drums marked with hazardous material labels. Logan recognized the codes: industrial chemicals, explosives most likely, enough to level half a district if combined wrong. Claire exhaled slowly. "They're planning to destroy the evidence. Maybe more." Logan's hand tightened on his rifle. "Then we end it here." He began laying out what little gear they had: 2 handguns, a scoped rifle, 3 magazines, and one of his old smoke grenades from a forgotten deployment. "We'll draw them out," he said. "Split their line. Once they're confused, we hit the truck controls. Disable the convoy before they can move." Claire checked her sidearm, her movements practiced despite her injuries. "And if Steele recognizes me?" "Then you shoot first." They waited for darkness. The quarry lights flickered to life, illuminating the skeletal towers in a pale industrial glow. The hum of the generators grew louder, masking the crunch of Logan's boots as he moved into position above the loading area. Claire stayed low beside a rusted conveyor belt, her gun steady, eyes fixed on Steele. Shadow crept silently between them, his breath visible in small, disciplined bursts. At 1943, the first explosion went off. A column of flame erupted from the far side of the quarry. Logan's diversion charge set off in an abandoned fuel drum. The echo rolled across the valley like thunder. Men shouted, scrambling for cover. The generators flickered. The convoy halted. Logan fired 3 controlled shots, disabling the headlights of the nearest truck. Claire seized the opening, moving forward along the low wall. She reached the main vehicle bay and yanked open the control panel, pulling the ignition fuses from the convoy trucks one by one. Sparks flew, engines died. From below, a voice roared, "Find them! Steal!" He stormed into the open, gun drawn, shouting orders. But before his men could scatter, Shadow lunged from the shadows, knocking one of the guards off balance. The dog's growl cut through the chaos, primal and fierce. Logan dropped from the ledge, rolling into cover beside Claire. "You good?" he asked. She nodded, sweat and snow mixing on her brow. "Truck's dead. They're not going anywhere." "Then neither are we," said a voice behind them. They turned. Steele stood at the edge of the platform, pistol raised, his face twisted into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Detective Monroe," he said slowly, "you're a harder woman to kill than I expected." Claire didn't flinch. "You tried to kill the truth, not me." Steele cocked the gun. "The truth doesn't bleed." Before he could fire, Shadow lunged again, slamming into Steele's arm. The shot went wild, ricocheting off the steel rail. Logan moved in an instant, closing the distance, disarming Steele with a brutal strike. The gun clattered to the ground. They struggled in the snow, 2 men locked in a fight that was more than muscle. It was conviction against corruption. Steele was strong, but Logan had lived too long with survival as a habit. One final blow sent the detective sprawling to the ground, gasping. Above them, Kane's voice roared through the chaos. "Pull back! Get the shipment out now!" Men scrambled for the remaining truck, but Logan fired into the cab, shattering the windshield. "Not today," he muttered. Kane glared down from the upper platform, his calm breaking at last. "You think you stopped this?" he shouted. "There's more coming, more than you can stop." Logan met his gaze. "Then I'll be waiting." Kane's men retreated under fire, engines roaring as they sped away into the darkness. Steele lay half-conscious in the snow, blood mixing with the ice. Claire approached him slowly, her gun leveled. "You had a choice once," she said quietly. "You could have protected people instead of selling them." He laughed weakly. "You think you've won? You haven't even seen the rest of it." Shadow growled beside her, but Logan placed a hand on the dog's neck, steadying him. "We'll take him in," Logan said. "Let him live long enough to talk." Claire hesitated, then lowered her weapon. In the distance, the last of the trucks disappeared beyond the ridge. The sky was black again, heavy with the promise of another storm. As the wind howled through the quarry's dead cranes, Claire turned to Logan. "This isn't over," she said. He nodded. "No, it's just beginning." And somewhere beyond the trees, Kane's convoy vanished into the night, taking with it the next chapter of a war neither of them had chosen, but both now had no choice but to fight. The night after the battle at North Fork Quarry was long and sleepless. The wind had died, but the silence it left behind was heavier than any blizzard. Inside an abandoned ranger outpost near the tree line, a single lamp burned low, its glow falling across the battered figure of Detective Marcus Steele. His wrists were tied with climbing rope, his breath shallow, and his face half in shadow. Across from him sat Logan Price, motionless except for the faint tap of his fingers against the wooden table. Claire Monroe stood by the window, watching the horizon. The cold light of dawn had begun to bleed through the clouds, turning the snowfields silver. Shadow sat at her feet, his side bandaged, his breathing steady again. His loyalty had nearly cost him his life at the quarry, and yet, even now, his eyes never left her. "Start talking," Logan said quietly. His voice carried no threat. It didn't need one. It was the kind of tone that came from men who had seen enough death to make silence terrifying. Steele didn't answer. His mouth curved into a faint, humorless smile. "You two think you've done something heroic?" he rasped. "You stopped one shipment, that's all. Kane doesn't run an operation, he runs a system. Cut off one branch, another grows. That's how this works." Claire stepped closer, her arms crossed. "Then tell us where the roots are." Steele chuckled, but there was a bitterness to it. "You don't get it, do you? You think Kane's hiding in some hole waiting for justice? He's in plain sight. You've already met the people who protect him." Logan's eyes narrowed. "Meaning what?" "Meaning the badge doesn't mean what it used to," Steele said. "You arrest me, and within 24 hours I'm gone. Some desk sergeant will lose the paperwork. Evidence disappears. Kane walks free, and you're both dead before the ink dries." Claire's voice hardened. "You've been his puppet for years. How many people did you sell for your peace of mind?" He turned his head toward her, eyes cold. "Peace?" he said. "There's no peace in this world, detective. There's survival. I learned that the day I realized heroes don't get promotions, they get coffins." Logan leaned forward. "You're wrong," he said softly. "Heroes just stop asking for rewards." For a moment no one spoke. The only sound was the hiss of the wind slipping through the cracks in the wood. Steele's expression faltered. Beneath the arrogance there was something else, a flicker of shame, quickly buried. Claire broke the silence. "You mentioned a system. If Kane isn't hiding, then where is he?" Steele hesitated, his breathing uneven. "He moves between safe houses. Old federal properties no one questions. One of them's in the valley, an old mining administration building near the river. It's where he keeps the main records, contacts, distribution lists. You'll never get close." Logan stood, picking up his coat. "We don't need to get close. We just need the truth to reach someone who still believes in it." Steele laughed weakly. "And who's that? There's no one left." Claire's expression changed, grief turning to resolve. "You're wrong," she said. "I know someone who'll listen." She turned toward Logan. "I had a mentor at the DEA, Agent Corbin Vance. He's off-grid, works internal corruption now. If I can reach him, he can pull the data from Kane's operation before it disappears." Logan nodded. "Then we start there." But Shadow suddenly lifted his head, ears forward, muscles tensing. The faint sound of crunching snow drifted from outside, slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. Logan moved instantly. Pulling Claire toward cover, he grabbed his rifle, motioned her to kill the light. The cabin plunged into near darkness. Through the thin crack in the wall, he saw them, 3 silhouettes moving between the trees, rifles slung, scanning the perimeter. "Steele's men?" Claire whispered. "No," Logan said. "Kane's." The words were barely out before a voice rang from the tree line. "Price, you've got something that doesn't belong to you." The sound of a man confident enough to announce himself. Logan recognized the tone. Someone who enjoyed control. He exchanged a quick glance with Claire. "We don't have long. Take Shadow and get to the truck out back. Head north. There's a service road. Stay on it till the bridge." She shook her head. I'm not leaving you." "Do it," he said firmly. "They're after Steele, not you. I'll buy time." Shadow growled as if understanding the words. Logan crouched near the door, weapon ready. The air grew colder as footsteps closed in. Then came a sharp knock on the door, mocking, rhythmic. "You can hand him over," the voice called, "or you can all burn together." For a moment Logan considered the odds. 3 outside, maybe more beyond the ridge. Claire and the dog behind him, Steele tied and useless. The old Marine instincts rose again, the calm that came before chaos. He whispered without looking back, "Go now." Claire hesitated, her eyes locked on him, then grabbed Shadow's collar and slipped toward the back exit. The dog looked back once, a low whine in his throat, then vanished into the dark. Logan waited until the faint crunch of snow faded, then stood. "You wanted your freedom," he said to Steele quietly. "Here's your chance to earn it." Before Steele could answer, Logan kicked open the front door, shotgun raised. The first flash of muzzle fire tore through the dawn, lighting up the white world outside. The fight had begun, and miles away through the forest, Claire ran through the snow with Shadow at her side, the rising sun spilling pale light over the mountains. Behind her, the crack of gunfire echoed through the valley, rolling like thunder across Aspen Ridge. The war wasn't over. It had only just found its voice. The following day brought a strange kind of quiet to Aspen Ridge. Snow still clung to the pines, but the wind had calmed, leaving only the faint creak of frozen branches in the distance. Down in the valley, a gray haze hung over the old river bridge, where Claire Monroe and Shadow waited in an abandoned truck that had once belonged to the Park Service. The windshield was cracked, the heater barely working, but it was shelter. Claire checked her watch for the 100th time. It had been 6 hours since she had last heard gunfire from the Ranger outpost. 6 hours since she'd left Logan Price behind. Every instinct in her screamed to go back, but she knew that's what Logan would never allow. His last words still echoed in her mind. "Run while there's still someone left to chase you." Shadow shifted beside her, head resting on her knee, eyes sharp even in fatigue. He seemed to sense her unease, his body tensed like a coiled spring. She looked down at him. "We're not done," she murmured. "Not until he's safe." She reached into her jacket pocket, pulling out a small satellite communicator, one of Logan's old military models. She pressed a sequence of buttons, and the screen flickered to life, showing weak signal strength. A single line of text blinked back. "Connection secured. Agent Corbin Vance." Her fingers trembled as she typed, "This is Monroe. Steele in custody. Kane active. Need extraction plus data link." The reply came after a long pause. "Signal traced. Kane moving resources south. Coordinates received. Stay hidden. We're coming in 6 hours." Claire's shoulders sagged in relief, but Shadow's sudden growl snapped her back to alertness. The dog was standing now, staring through the cracked windshield toward the tree line. She followed his gaze and froze. Headlights, 2 of them, crawling slowly through the fog. She shut off the communicator and ducked low, motioning Shadow to stay quiet. The trucks drew closer, their engines muffled, tires crunching softly over the snow. The first one stopped barely 50 yards away. A man stepped out, heavy coat, rifle slung, face hidden behind a scarf. Then another, then 3 more. Her pulse quickened. She knew that formation. Kane's mercenaries. But before panic could take over, a familiar sound rose from the distance. A single gunshot, then 2 more, sharp and deliberate. Claire's breath caught. That was no ambush fire. That was signal fire. Logan was alive. The men outside turned, distracted. Claire seized the moment. She grabbed her handgun, pushed open the truck door silently, and slipped into the snow. Shadow followed close, his paws making no sound. She moved through the trees, keeping the headlights behind her, and soon saw movement up ahead, one man dragging another toward a clearing. Then she heard the voice. "Careful with him," said Kane. Her blood ran cold. She crouched behind a fallen log, eyes narrowing through the mist. Kane stood near an old utility shed at the river's edge, speaking to two of his men. Even in the haze, his posture radiated control. "Price will come for the girl," he said. "He's a soldier. Soldiers don't run from a fight. They run toward one. When he shows up, end it. I want the body." Claire's chest tightened. She whispered to Shadow, "We need to move. Quiet." They circled behind the shed, creeping through the snow until they reached an old drainage tunnel that led beneath the road. From there, she could see the men setting up their trap, sandbags, rifles, a small field generator powering floodlights. Kane was building his final stand right here in the valley. Then she saw it, a familiar figure tied to a chair beside the generator, bruised, bleeding, but unmistakably alive. Logan. For a heartbeat she couldn't breathe. Relief and terror collided in her chest. He was alive, but barely. Shadow tensed beside her, ready to charge. She placed a hand on his neck. "Not yet," she whispered. "Wait." Kane paced in front of Logan, his boots crunching over the ice. "You should have stayed in your cabin," he said, his voice almost casual. "You could have died quietly. Now you'll die with purpose. You'll send a message." Logan's voice was hoarse but steady. "You talk too much for a man who hides behind hired guns." Kane smiled faintly. "You'll see what power looks like soon enough." Claire's mind raced. She scanned the area. 3 men near the generator, 2 more by the road, Kane and 1 sniper on the ridge. She had 1 gun, 8 rounds, and Shadow. Logan's weapons were gone, likely stripped. But there was one thing Kane didn't know: Logan's knack for improvisation. As if sensing her thought, Logan shifted his wrist slightly, and Claire noticed it, the faint glint of a broken nail wedged into the rope. He was buying time. She looked at Shadow. "On my mark," she whispered. The dog's muscles coiled. When the generator lights flickered, Kane turned his head for just a second. That was all it took. A flash of movement burst from the snow. Shadow charging from the shadows with a guttural roar. The first guard barely had time to turn before the dog hit him full force, knocking him into the ice. The gunfire erupted instantly, the valley exploding into chaos. Claire dashed forward, firing 2 precise shots, one hitting the generator, plunging the camp into partial darkness, another dropping the second guard. She reached Logan in seconds, cutting the rope around his wrists with a single slice of her knife. "Couldn't stay away, could you?" he rasped. "Neither could you," she shot back. Kane shouted, his voice echoing through the valley. "Kill them both!" Logan grabbed a fallen rifle and rolled for cover beside Claire, firing back toward the ridge. Snow exploded around them. Shadow darted through the fog, weaving between the mercenaries' legs, scattering their formation. "Kane's running!" Claire yelled. Logan saw him too, a dark shape sprinting toward a black SUV near the trees. Logan fired, but the bullet grazed the vehicle's side mirror as it roared to life. "He's getting away." "Not yet," Logan said. He sprinted forward, pulling a flare from his belt. He lit it. the red smoke cutting through the fog like a wound, then threw it under the SUV as it accelerated. The flare hit the leaking fuel line. The explosion ripped through the valley, a shock wave of flame and snow. The SUV flipped, tumbling end over end before crashing into the frozen riverbank. Silence followed, a terrible, ringing silence broken only by the wind. Logan lowered his rifle, breathing hard. "That's for every life you bought," he muttered. Claire turned to him, snow and ash clinging to her hair. "Is it over?" He looked at the burning wreck. For him, maybe, but not for what he built. They stood there for a moment as the fire burned brighter against the cold sky. Then Claire knelt beside Shadow, who was limping slightly but alive. She wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "Good boy, you did it." Logan looked at them both, a rare, weary smile touching his face. "He's tougher than both of us combined." From the distance came the faint hum of a helicopter, DEA colors flashing through the clouds. Claire looked up, relief flooding her eyes. "That's Corbin. He found us." As the rotor wash whipped the snow into spirals, she turned to Logan. "You don't have to disappear this time," she said. "You could stay." He shook his head, eyes on the horizon. "Some men are built to stay. Some are built to make sure others can." When the helicopter landed, Corbin Vance stepped out, tall, weathered, his expression a mix of fury and pride. He embraced his sister briefly before nodding at Logan. "We'll clean up what's left. You've done enough." Logan gave a faint nod, his breath forming a mist in the cold air. "Just make it count." As the DEA agent secured the site, Claire looked back once more. Logan was already walking away, his figure fading into the snowy forest with Shadow trotting at his side. The dawn light broke through the clouds, casting gold over the valley. For the first time in years, the storm had ended, but the echoes of war still followed the man who had brought peace by force. When the storm quieted and the snow began to melt, the mountain didn't just hold the echo of a rescue, it held a miracle. A man who had long given up on faith found it again in the eyes of a wounded woman and a loyal dog who refused to die. Sometimes God's miracles don't arrive with thunder or light. They come quietly, through courage, compassion, and the will to keep breathing when the world goes cold. So tonight, as you sit in the comfort of your home, remember, maybe the miracle you're waiting for is already beside you, waiting to be seen. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and leave a comment about what you believe the real miracle was. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories of faith, courage, and the unseen battles that shape the human soul. May God bless you and everyone you love, even in the darkest storm.